And good evening. I just want to do a quick little live video. It is now about 8:30 here at night. I won't want to be too long. Obviously, wanted to share this. We've had announced that Australia's now officially in a recession. We've had 8% drop in the economy. Of course, obviously, tonight our bourgeois media explaining the outcome of the recession, or the cause of it, was because of a buyer's strike from the months of April, May and June. That's when the first of the lockdowns happened, and because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And they're trying to blame now us working class people that we're on strike, buyer's strike. Well, that was an incorrect position to have. Obviously, they like to actually try and deflect anything at all about the root cause of this current economic crisis. The root cause of this economic crisis is the crisis of overproduction. Once again, we see ourselves in this a lot deeper now than we were in 2008. A lot more people aren't able to buy a lot of things now that are produced anymore, and that number is increasing tenfold every day we speak. India's economy dropped by 30%. So, and they've constantly got a population far bigger than Australia. So that crisis over there is going to be really hit hard. But what they're now saying, this is now just as bad as the Great Depression in the 1930s. Interesting enough, they said this is the worst recession, depression, that third worst recession and depression they've had since 1909. Great Depression 1930s was the worst. One in 1909 was second. Now this one is third in place. And they are using the depression word now. Now, without being doom and gloom, this is just, it was all due to happen. There's a crisis of capitalism was been predicted a few years ago. Bourgeois economists were saying back then that the economy is going to go crash, and it's going to crash big time. Where does it leave us now? Well, first of all, obviously the attacks on the working class is going to intensify. It's already there it's already on the cards. They're looking into slashing JobKeeper and JobSeeker, which is a form of welfare, but obviously JobKeeper is there to retain people in work and all of them to spend as well. But even with JobSeeker, they're looking to slash that as well. They're looking to actually slash our wages and conditions as well. Any type of gains the working classes have gained for many, many years is now up on the drawing board to be completely cancelled overnight by a stroke of a pen through legislation. This is where vitally important why we need to start getting organised out there, both within unions and in unemployed and also as unemployed people as well. We do have the Australian Unemployed Workers Union. They've been doing some good work in a lot of areas, but now is a really essential part now is to carry your bit. Get in there and start helping organise now on a mass scale. And the important thing is start talking about people about the economic crisis, start talking about their concerns and their fears, which actually now leads me into something a little bit deeper too, because I'm going to talk a little bit about fascism tonight, and I'm going to do a little more of a video on it. As you can understand what's going on in the US, we're seeing just the complete dismantling of that, or the complete crumbling of that society as well, the polarising of it. Obviously, a lot of support for Trump and a lot of fascists supporting Trump through this as well. And I was having a discussion with some comrades before about it, but I think we've got to understand what is fascism. And if we actually go to this book, this little book here, Against Fascism and War by Georgi Dimitrov. This was written in the 1930s, actually, the time when Hitler came to power, or at the time the Nazis, and also Mussolini's Italy. So there were some words referencing back to what Nazi Germany was, but we can even look at modern day examples as well. Pinochet's Chile. We can look at El Salvador. We can look at a lot of countries in Latin America that had fascist dictators at the time. Not out in Africa. We can even look at our organisations like ISIS. They're fascist themselves. And some of those Middle Eastern countries, although more feudal, but obviously in displaying those, they also would get behind and supporting fascism. Now, I think we've got to understand what is fascism first, and completely hear this because this word has been very loosely used. Now, I'll give you a classic example. people have been equating a lot of those libertarians, for example, have been obviously conducting these mass rallies about against wearing a mask and about being forced into lockdown, etc., because of COVID-19. Now, the fact is, it's also there has been a recruiting ground for fascist organisations, but a lot of them are not fascist. They're bonkers. I would call them bonkers, but they're not fascist. Not all of them are fascists. Yes, and they've had fascists been at their rallies, whatever, because what happens, fascists play on everyone's fears, which is primarily economic. So I think we've, first of all, I think we've got to agree globally how that word's used a lot, because as I said, this is used loosely. And unfortunately, the ultra left, that's right, the ultra left, the Trotskyite movement, etc., they use that and they call anyone a fascist. They just want to go out and use that word loosely. And also what Americans call the liberals or left liberals, radical liberals, etc. They've been using this word for so long in a loose way. Even Susan Sontag, who was part of the synthetic left, tried to equate communism with fascism, trying to turn it to divorce it from its very meaning of what it actually is. And it was done deliberately. So us as the working class don't realise what it is. And I want to actually come to this little page in a minute when I'm just talking, as I'm continuing talking, to what is fascism. And we've obviously I recommend reading this book from start to finish, because it's obviously a very important one where everyone needs to understand as well. And yeah, we obviously, as I said, this was written around the time of the 1930s. George Dimitrov was a Bulgarian, actually. And he was reporting to the Communist International a lot when he wrote this. And we've, as I said, we need to understand what is described, what is fascism. Now, when he was reporting to what we call the 13th plenum of the Executive Committee of the Communist International, and the Communist International, if you actually want to know more about that, look at Comrade Dus James's YouTube account, and Facebook page as well. Both Dust and myself, we actually did the study on the three internationals, history of the three internationals by William Z. Foster. Highly recommend this still to read. If you want an introduction to Marxism, this is it. But it talked about the Comintern and around that time as well. I just want to read the class character of fascism. He described fascism as the open terrorist dictatorship of the most reactionary, most chauvinistic, and most imperialist elements of finance capital. The most reactionary variety of fascism is German type of fascism, which it was describing back there. And it liked to confuse people as well by calling itself National Socialism, though it has nothing in common with socialism. German fascism was not only bourgeois nationalism, it is fiendish chauvinism. It is a governed system of political gangsterism, a system of provocation and torture practiced upon the working class and the revolutionary elements of the peasantry. In Australia, we don't have a peasantry, the petty bourgeois and the intelligentsia. It is medieval barbarity and bestiality. It is unbridled aggression in relation to other nations. And it was acting as a spearhead for the international counter-revolution. Now, at the time, you had the Soviet Union and obviously revolutions or revolutionary movements in other countries, which was threatening the rule of capitalism. And it goes as the chief instigator of imperialist war, was the initiator of a crusade against the Soviet Union. What he's basically explained, now it was further with fascism, is fascism is not a form of state power standing above both classes, the working class and the capitalist. As Otto Böhm, for instance, has asserted, it is not the revolt of the petty bourgeoisie, which has captured the machinery of the state, as some have said. No, fascism is not a power standing above class nor government of the petty bourgeois or the lumpen proletariat over finance capital. Fascism is the power of finance capital itself. It is the organisation of terrorists of vengeance against the working class and the revolutionary section of peasantry and the intelligentsia. In foreign policy, fascism is jingoism in its most brutal form, fomenting bestial hatred of other nations. This the true character of fascism must be particularly stressed because in a number of countries under cover of social demagoguery, fascism has managed to gain the following of the mass of the petty bourgeoisie that has been dislocated by the crisis, capitalism, and even of certain sections of the most backward strata of the working class. These would never have supported fascism if they had understood its real character and its true nature. So I understand this. Fascism can appear in many ways too. In Australia here, obviously it'll have its own national identity. The US will obviously have its national identity. And I want to explain that with what it will look like. When I just had this discussion now, obviously there are fascist groups in the US, they're fully armed and seeing what's happening with the increased violence. Now, a little of the discussion was Trump a fascist? Now, I tended to say no. He might have explained some various elements of it, but the thing is, he's got to be one of the most extreme imperialists as well. And he actually wanted to pull out of Syria and a few other countries around the place. So he wasn't particularly interested in using that too much of that foreign policy that way. So he's quite a walking contradiction. Is he a whack job? Yeah, well, certainly, you know me by now, that's what I've described him as. But this is what I think we do need to stop using this term loosely and understand what it really is and what it represents as well. Now, is the US on its way to fascism is going to be a very interesting question this time, and a strong possibility, very big possibility. Now, Trump has said if he doesn't win, he's not going to concede defeat. And Biden's been instructed to by the same thing by that war hawk Hillary Clinton to do the same thing as well. Now, if that comes to it, then you would have the military step in, and you would have a military type dictatorship as well, with AKA upon fascist rule. When they may use Trump as a figurehead or Biden, whatever. So watch the space of the time being, but this is to understand what we need to know the importance of that as well. I think what I'd say when we've also go out and when we talk to people and everything else, and unfortunately, this is the ultra left steps in when they start accusing people of being fascist. Well, that's wrong. That's a wrong thing to actually do because a lot of people are not. And why they're probably attracted to it in the first place. But what happens? Fascism aims at the most unbridled exploitation of the masses, but it approaches them with the most artful anti-capitalist demagoguery, taking advantage of the deep hatred of the working people against the plundering bourgeoisie, the banks, the trusts, the financial magnates, and advancing those slogans which at the given moment are more alluring to the politically immature masses. And in Germany, for example, the general welfare is higher than the welfare of the individual. And then also in fascist Italy, our state is not a capitalist but a corporate state. In Japan, during Imperial Japan, the Japan without exploitation, the United States share the wealth and so forth. And what happens? Fascism plays on people's economic fears, and this is where going right to when I just openly started with the economic crisis now, the depression we're up against. People are now going to be scared about and very concerned of their economic circumstances they find themselves in. They're going to be losing their homes, losing jobs, unable to buy anything, etc. And they're looking to know when they're going to survive. How they're going to survive. And their fascism is going to promise everything. They're going to play on people's fears. And I just want to read this a little bit further. It goes, fascism promised the workers a fair wage, but actually it has brought them an even lower, a pauper standard of living. So what even that, they promised them all that. They'll promise workers this, they'll promise workers that. But in fact, what they're going to do is offer them misery. They're going to offer basically low wages. And this is why Caleb Maupin actually correctly pointed out where we're heading, a low-wage police state or low-wage fascist state, whatever. And as well also too, just want to just clarify any confusion as well about fascism. Fascism is not a separate social system at all. It's not socialism. Now, it has been equated with socialism and communism. Now, socialism is the rule of the working class. The working class has seized political power. It has knocked the capitalist class out, and it's nationalising major industries, and everything is now under the guidance of the working class, either through a party or through another mass working class organisation, as its leader, and organised society on just forms where profit is no longer in command, but the working class is, and it's a centrally organised economy. in the sense where that everyone benefits from what's generated, not just the capitalist few. All right. At the moment, we live under a system of capitalism where the very few own all the wealth, but the working class creates it, and the capitalist class owns it. And it's on a global scale now. If it's globalism, well, that's what it is. It's capitalism on a global scale. Communism is actually a withering away of the state. It is where there's so much material abundance of everything. There's no more contending classes. Everyone is provided for. There's no need to have a state apparatus to enforce a class rule anymore. That's communism. But fascism is capitalism itself. It's most brutal terrorist dictatorship form of finance capital. It's not separate from capitalism. It is the most violent form of capitalist rule you can actually ever imagine. Nazi Germany, fascist Italy was just classic examples, but you had Spain, you had Hungary, and also Latin America right up through to Pinochet. And I'll use that as much easier example. It's a lot more clearer in mind. Or even Indonesia under Suharto as well. So that gives you an idea what fascism is. It's not a separate social system. It is capitalism in decay. It is capitalism in crisis. It's capitalism on its deathbed. And the only way it finds it can still continue in existence is through brutal terrorist dictatorship. That's what it is. So I want to make that absolutely loud and clear. I'm going to be doing some more talks on it. Actually, I would like to do some studies for it. So if anyone that does watch this video, if you're interested in doing a study with me, let me know through the comment, and we'll see about hitting me up. Usually I like doing it through a Zoom in. We can go for I'll go for any other bits and pieces beforehand, record it. Maybe I need to edit it, and then we can upload it on there as well. And I certainly would like to do that as well. I'm going to do another talk probably on Saturday morning as well. Once again at the same time, 9 o'clock. Obviously, talk about more so this economic crisis and the struggle ahead as well. But I just wanted to throw that little piece in there for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It's a good little talk on that as well. But in the meantime, I know we're in really scary times too, very concerning times. We're all concerned at our output, but we all need now to start getting organised, sticking together, and also knowing our stuff as well. Know our philosophy, know our political economy and our social science, and understand that we've got other like-minded comrades out there we can team up with, and we don't just have to worry about being alone. We're all in this together around the world. So I'm going to end it for tonight. I am pretty tired. I need to be up again early tomorrow, but just want to end it off with this: with dare to struggle, dare to win. If you don't fight, you lose. Thank you, folks.